Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next segment of A New Era for Food and Climate. For the next 45 minutes, we're coming to you from Burlington, Vermont, where we'll be discussing shifting to healthy and sustainable climate-friendly diets. So, as we know, the healthy amount of meat to eat is somewhere around a burger a week. And of course, many people around the world eat quite a bit less than that and may want to, for health reasons, increase their consumption. But for most of us in the West, in northern countries, from affluent backgrounds, we're eating at least 50% more than that, if not even more. And there is substantial reasons for us to cut down. There are health reasons, there are environmental reasons. A cut of even 15% can have spectacular effects for climate change. And now with COVID-19, there are also health effects, reducing the transmission of zoonoses, for instance. So given all of that, why aren't we cutting down our meat consumption more? For those of us who are trying to make dietary change from a personal basis, it feels a bit tough. And so how much tougher it must feel if you're trying to do it for the whole of society, where you need to bring together personal behavioral change with changes in policies and incentives and business practices. So we've got a very exciting session today where we're going to bring in some insider views on how to make a difference at scale. So we have with us today three panelists who will be speaking, answering questions and presenting their videos. These three are Rebekah Moses, who is Head of Impact Strategy at Impossible Foods, Becky Ramsing, Senior Program Officer at Johns Hopkins Center for a Livable Future, and particularly the Scientific Advisory on Meatless Mondays, and Joyca Leplae, who's Head of Campaigns for the Service for Environment and Climate at the city of Ghent in Belgium. Before we move into speaking with our panelists and speakers, I'd just like to draw your attention to some housekeeping and announcements around how the session will be run. So first of all, during the session, we're going to have live pollings and a Q&A, where we hope to interact with all of you in the audience. To ask a question and participate in the audience interaction sessions, you'll need to download the Hoover app. And there should be a slide that you can see right now that has the instructions. To access the app, you'll need to enter the email address you used for the event registration and create a password. If the event doesn't show up automatically, search for A New Era for Food and Climate and then click the join button at the bottom and enter the event invitation code the organizers sent you. You can request a new code and wait until the organizers approve your request. Secondly, on the live polling, hopefully you can see a slide on this too. If you'd like to participate in the live polling, you'll also need to use the Hoover app. Simply go to the Hoover app and select polls. Select the question being asked and submit your answer. Finally, there's a report associated with today's sessions. And to download the report, the Actions to Transform Food Systems Under Climate Change report, please go to the link provided below to download your copy. Please do make sure you type in the link exactly as displayed. Well, that's it from me now. Over to the video presentations.
Tastes like a chicken nugget. We're going plant-based.
Did you know that the easiest way to reduce your carbon footprint is to eat less meat, especially beef? If the world didn't eat meat for 1 year, it would eliminate the same amount of greenhouse gas emissions it would take to drive to Pluto and back. 3 times!
People eat meat almost more than anything else on the planet. If we and other companies continue to put our head down and develop sensible technology, the world will change.
Join us and go meat-free on Mondays.
I'm Pat Brown. I'm the founder and CEO of Impossible Foods. There's overwhelming evidence that we're never going to be able to cap global average temperatures at 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial unless we massively reduce the scale of animal agriculture. And the destructive impact is multifaceted, but probably the most important two components of that are the impact on climate, the net greenhouse gas emissions, which are greater than the entire transportation sector and second only to the power industry as a source of emissions, and the opportunity cost for greenhouse gas mitigation represented by the 45% of Earth's land surface that's currently in use raising animals for food, either being grazed or raising feed crops. A lot of engineers are thinking about really wild, capital-intensive, untested, potentially very risky ways to effectively turn back the clock on climate change. But photosynthesis has been optimized over billions of years of evolution. It's extremely well understood, does not require any extensive human intervention. It just requires us to step back from this vast footprint of animal agriculture and allow plants to grow, and in the process, by photosynthesis, pulling carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and turning it into plant biomass that not only stores it out of the atmosphere, but provides essential habitat for restoration of biodiversity. Something that no one talks about, but is absolutely critical if we really want to avoid a climate catastrophe. So we take that opportunity seriously. If I thought that it were possible to convince people to make the dietary changes required to avoid this climate and biodiversity catastrophe, I wouldn't have founded Impossible Foods. But there's just absolutely no way. And it's a win-win for biodiversity.
My name is Laura Kleiman, and I am a principal scientist on the product innovation team at Impossible Foods. And our team is responsible for designing and creating the new products. So in order to make progress on climate change and meet our mission of creating a globally sustainable food system, we needed to make sure that carnivores and meat lovers are choosing plant-based meats over the animal version. And to do that, it was clear we needed to use science and technology to create products that were so good and tasted so much like the animal version that there was no question that meat lovers are going to choose this option that's better for them and better for the earth. So in order to do that, we break down the animal products into their essential building blocks to understand what are the components that allow you to design that product and give the consumer everything that they crave. So you have everything from fats to proteins, simple nutrients like amino acids and sugars that allow you to create flavor. And we are able to understand how all of those building blocks function and then put them back together, but using more sustainable plant-based ingredients. So we use really simple ingredients like soy protein, potato protein, water, coconut and sunflower oils for the fats that give you that mouthfeel and the sizzle. And then our magic ingredient is heme, which is an iron-containing molecule that is found in every living plant and animal and is responsible for making meat taste like meat. So that really delivers the flavor and taste that consumers expect.
Hi, my name's Isha Shah. I work with Impossible Foods and I work on the Consumer Insights team. I lead all our efforts to understand the consumer better so that we, in everything that we do, from product innovation to marketing to communication, we're really rooted in the voice of the consumer. From a previous study that we did, we learned that around 1/3 of the US population is aware that meat and dairy or animal agriculture on the whole has a negative impact on the environment. When it comes to food choices, taste is the number one factor on the consumer's mind when they're making these food decisions. Consumers need to be able to cook with it. They need to be able to use it in the same way that they have always used beef their entire life. So whether it is the bleeding, the cooking, the texture, all of that, but most importantly, it has to taste amazing. And that's the only thing that's going to drive progress. The beauty is that when they do make these choices, when they do opt for a plant-based burger or a plant-based meat product instead of the animal product, they are making a very strong positive impact on the environment, even without knowing so. And that's kind of what we're really hoping to achieve.
Every day, people around the world are eating very different things. However, in many parts of the world, we're eating the same thing: too much meat, and it's affecting our health and the health of the planet. But on Monday, we can start doing something about it. Join the Meatless Monday movement and cut out meat one day a week. When we lower our meat consumption and discover the power of plant-based protein, our hearts get healthier, we lower our risk of cancer, and we reduce the risk of diabetes and reach healthier weights. And by going Meatless Monday, we help the earth get healthier along with us. By skipping one burger, a person can save 10 bathtubs full of water and enough energy to power a smartphone for 6 months. And if everyone in the world skipped meat for just one day, we would eliminate the amount of greenhouse gas emissions it would take to drive to the moon and back 100,000 times. With more innovative plant-based recipes being developed every day, it's easier than ever to find delicious alternatives to meat. So join Meatless Monday, a simple and powerful global movement creating healthier people and a healthier planet.
Meatless Monday was born in 2003 out of a conversation between CLF founder Bob Lawrence and marketing executive Sid Lerner. Primarily a health-focused initiative at first, Meatless Monday's simple message of one day a week, cut the meat, grew organically over the next 15 years to a highly recognized campaign that addresses the many issues surrounding the way we produce and consume meat, including our climate. Meatless Monday is one of the most hashtag public health campaigns driven in a large part by influencers, social media, and creative tasty food. Over the years, as science advisors, we've learned a few things about what it takes for people to reduce meat consumption. It's about the food first. If it tastes good, people will eat it, regardless of the meat. What others are doing, family, friends, colleagues, influences our choices. Good experiences when trying new foods lead to other changes, as well as an openness to new awareness and learning, which helps people take further actions toward healthier, more sustainable diets. Meatless Monday also grew to over 40 countries, and we at CLF, along with the Monday campaigns, embarked on developing a global strategy to help countries facilitate shifts toward healthy and sustainable climate-friendly diets. The initiative is focused on growing partnerships and networks, building coalitions around local initiatives, and pursuing a global advocacy agenda around meat consumption. But in order to truly achieve a sustainable and healthy world where all people can thrive and grow, we first had to acknowledge the global syndemic of obesity, undernutrition, and climate change that represents the gravest threat to humankind, according to a 2019 Lancet paper. While some regions eat too much meat, others still experience unacceptable rates of undernutrition, which prevent children growing to healthy adults and contributing to a healthy, equitable society. So the approach must be different. High-income countries that consume well above the guidelines for meat, we carry the burden of reducing meat consumption and our food-related greenhouse gas emissions. In fact, in a recent paper, CLF demonstrated that for 70% of the highest income countries, practicing a meat-free day can reduce per-person food-related greenhouse gas emissions by 12%. In low middle-income countries, Meatless Monday can provide guidance on the healthy plant-based diets and also on more sustainable production of animal products, especially dairy and eggs that are so important for child growth, but are also large contributors of greenhouse gas emissions. Here's a busy graph from our recent paper showing that progressively more plant-forward dietary patterns that meet healthy criteria have much different impacts depending on a country's baseline diet, how food is produced, and where it comes from. So back to our global strategy, we focus on developing culturally relevant, segmented messages that are adaptable by audience and entry point, engaging a community around meat reduction through our global platform, building partnerships and networks, and assisting programs with evaluating and understanding their impact. Many rightly point out that a meatless day is only a small change and won't be enough, but we argue that a small change can be a more powerful and long-lasting than a large behavior change, which tends not to last, especially when adopted across many individuals and groups, as this slide shows. We have evidence from surveys that people who are aware of meatless Monday and practice it even occasionally make other changes, such as purchasing less meat, trying meatless dishes when eating out, eating meatless meals on other days of the week, eating more vegetables, and just eating less meat overall. So whether you are an educator, policymaker, home cook, or influencer, your action matters. Consider joining the global community or taking a simple action of trying a delicious plant-based meal the next time Monday rolls around. Thanks.
We launched our food policy in 2013. The food policy tries to make the local food system more sustainable, looking at production, consumption, food waste, different aspects. And together with it, we launched our Food Policy Council. The council is a group of stakeholders related to the local food system that comes together 3 times a year and guide us in our food policy, give us advice, propose new initiatives, actions, evaluate together with us. It's composed of stakeholders from the food system like agricultural organizations, restaurants, social organizations, organizations of sustainable consumption, so different aspects are covered.
On the topic of food, you can connect people. So there are all different kinds of projects that bring people together by doing growing or by making food together or learn how to cook food. And the other things is more like what about social justice, what about the access of people to food and especially how people can afford the better food and not only like very cheap food from supermarkets.
This area is the poorest area in Flanders, so we decided to use this area for the people living in this neighborhood. First we built 160 small gardens and they were rented in 1 week and we had a long waiting list. And in 2012 we decided to build 2 big gardens where we grow organic food for the social restaurant and the social grocery store. We have an agreement with them, they don't have to pay for our vegetables. We have like 300 volunteers working here. What we want to do is try to build a community and find solutions for needs in this community.
We started this restaurant from 2 ideas. The social idea and the ecological idea. The social idea is that we try to help people here to learn a job so that they can have one day a job in the real world. And ecological, we think that the earth and so also Ghent can be saved when we try to work and to consume in an ecological way. For us it's important that all things we use in the kitchen is from the local producers. We look what the farmers tell us they can offer and then we make a dish with those things that there are.
So our main activities are talking with schools and city governments and companies, all kind of different stakeholders to raise awareness about the positive effect of eating more plant-based. So we encourage people to take part in our Thursday Veggie Day campaign. That's a campaign which helps people to take that first step and eat at least one day a week vegetarian. And in order to do that, we organize a lot of workshops. We also have a lot of publications with free recipes and tips and tricks.
So this is organic white rice from Thailand. It comes from our partner, our trade partner, GreenNet. GreenNet is a network of cooperatives, of 110 cooperatives of producers. They get a fair price, so a higher price than the regular price for rice. And on top of this fair price, they get a fee for fair trade. Yeah, fair. They use this fee to buy a water pump for the agriculture.
Food is a very interesting topic to cut across dimensions of being a smart city, because it's something where you get easy access to people and that can be used for different ambitions to become a smarter city.
So hi, my name is Joyca Leplae. I work for the Service of Environment and Climate for the city of Ghent in Belgium. Here's our campaign image of the Thursday Veggie Day campaign. We started in 2009. This was the first time we shifted from identity to context, but we focused on changing the context so that the effort for eating less meat would become very, very low. So that was the reason we started with a one-day effort. And what was also very important for the success of the campaign was that we, as a local government, gave the good example. So from the first day of the campaign, the default for Thursday was eating vegetarian in our own restaurants and schools. Also, some other elements were like making it fun, making it available, having the National Vegetarian Organization as a very important partner. During the 10 years, we did some surveys on did this actually mean a sustainable change in behavior and in eating less meat by the city of Ghent. And these different surveys resulted in good numbers. And the last one you see here really showed that the effect was sustainable over the years. And we still have a higher percentage of people eating less meat than other cities. But now, after 10 years, what do you do? What's the next step? Should we go from one day a week eating less meat to several days a week? Or should we go to focus more on plant-based or vegan food? We do a survey on what people think they need now to take the next step. And we also try to link it more to our climate neutrality targets. We want to be climate neutral in 2050. We think it's somewhere near 50 by 50, which means 50% reduction in 2050 of people eating meat. And then we want to do a backcasting exercise with some important stakeholders and maybe some participation from the population also. In the survey we did last year, people said that they still need support. We've put a lot of effort in the last years to make it available and to support people, but this is still something that people really point to as a need they still have. So I think we need to keep focusing on the context, the availability and the support to make it really easy to go to a plant-based diet. We really want to target on 50% of plant-based proteins in every meal. That is what we see as the next steps to keep the good numbers of the campaign what they are and take the next step into the future by targeting to 2050.
Hello again from Burlington, Vermont, and I hope that everyone was inspired by the video presentations that we've been watching. Now, just a reminder again, we have our three panelists with us and they're ready to answer questions and discuss issues arising. So just a reminder again, if you wish to submit a question, please do use the Hoover app. Simply type your question into the app. If you haven't already accessed it, you can do so by following the instructions on this slide. I'll give you a brief moment to take down the information. Okay. Next, moving on to the poll questions. These are also answerable via the Hoover app, and several people have already been sending in their answers. So I'll just read the 2 questions aloud to you, give everyone another 30 to 45 seconds to submit answers, and then we can look at the results. So the first question is a tricky quiz question. Which one of the following countries is in the top 4 beef consuming countries per capita in the world? And the choices are Denmark, Australia, Israel, and China. And the other question is about your own preferences. So to reduce your carbon footprint, would you rather eat cell-grown meat, eat plant-based meat, such as Impossible Foods, eat other protein sources instead of meat, perhaps pulses, nuts, tofu, peas, beans, eat meat only once a week or less, or change nothing at all? All right, just giving everybody a few more seconds. The answers are coming in to both of those questions. Okay, should we go into the answers now? So I'm looking at the poll results in front of me. So which one of the following is in the top 4 beef consuming countries per capita? Now, 49% of you, nearly half of those online, have gone for Australia. I have to let you know that the organizers did trick you a little bit here, because the correct answer is actually the country that received the fewest responses, and that's Israel. Israel is up there in the top 4 highest beef consuming countries per capita in the world. So that one's a brain teaser, and one which I'm sure you can bring into quizzes with friends and family. Let's move now to the second poll result, which is around reducing your own carbon footprint by changing your own dietary habits. Here we've got an interesting spread of results, and again, around half people, 48%, come in on the answer to eat other protein sources instead of meat. And these are pulses, nuts, tofu, peas, and so on. The vegetable foods that eaten as whole foods can provide alternatives to animal-based proteins. The second most popular answer, with about a third of people going for it, is to eat meat only once a week or less, so to reduce frequency. And I'm pleased to report that only 4 out of 150 people opted for changing nothing at all. So that's encouraging. We're getting the message here that people are willing to change, and certainly we also know that that's true across the world. 30 to 50% of adults in the US, for example, have indicated that they'd like to change their meat consumption. So let's turn now to the experts, those who are trying to make this happen on a daily basis, and get some of their insights into how we make it happen. So I'd like to start now with one of the most positively framed questions that has come in, and this is from Federica Mattioli. And she asks, she said, what we've seen with COVID-19 over the past couple of months is this massive scale behavior change. Governments have acted in coordination, and people have responded and have stayed at home and stayed in isolation. So what we've demonstrated is that huge behavioral change is possible. I'd like to turn now, I think I'll give this question to Rebekah Moses. What are your projections? Do you think that this kind of massive behavior change is actually possible around dietary choices? And can you give us some insights into what we might have learned from these past few months around the types of incentives or types of impulses that make behavioral change possible at such scale? Over to you, Rebekah.
Thank you. It's a really, really good question, and I'm torn between a certain amount of optimism, but also the realization that behavior change is incredibly sticky. especially durable behavior change, and very much especially with your food choice, with our kind of dietary habits, because that is a manifestation of culture. It's a manifestation of many, many, many different things interacting together, and addressing it without viable alternatives can be really hard. So specifically talking about things like meat consumption. The reason that I am optimistic is because with COVID-19, with the real kind of global willingness to make hard choices and to kind of act for a global good, we have both recognized that what we do impacts others, and so that's very, very important. And we have also been able to show that we can make drastic changes in the context, though, of life and limb, right? So there's kind of an awareness that if we don't make these changes, there are very near-term consequences. If we don't social distance, someone that I care about could become sick. It's a very real, very immediate danger. Whereas when you're talking about things like climate, when you're talking about things like food choice and the linkages to climate, it's much more abstract for a lot of people. So not only do you have this kind of stickiness of food choice, you have what is fundamentally a rather abstract notion for people to link to. And we've actually done at Impossible Foods a lot of really deep research on this. One of the individuals you saw in the video, Isha Shah, her team on Consumer Insights did a lot of work on trying to figure out with the sustainability team, what is it about behavior change that is so hard when it comes to environment? And the recognition among general audiences is very low that meat has a very strong plate to planet connection. So you're not only breaking down this awareness barrier, only about 1/3 of Americans can identify meat as a driver of climate issues. Very few of them can connect it to land use issues or biodiversity loss issues. You then also have to get them into a position where they feel comfortable changing diets in a way that's very easy for them to do it. And if it's not easy, it will not happen. And so I love these results from this poll of, about half of the participants in this call, which is a highly educated audience on these issues, are willing to look at things like tofu, or willing to look at things like lentils, pulses, alternatives that are not, equivalent goods. But most consumers are not willing to do that. And that's really proven out through the durable levels of consumption, through the fact that beef consumption is going to go up by about, it'll increase by 80% over the next couple of decades globally. And so the case for viable alternatives that can fit into existing food cultures that are super versatile, that have the same or better nutritional components, becomes very, very strong.
Thank you very much, Rebekah, for that clear, articulate answer. Moving to the next question, several audience members have written in with a question voicing their concerns about the livelihoods associated with livestock industries. So people employed all along food value chains, but most particularly small-scale pastoralists in places like Africa who are heavily dependent on livestock. Surely meat reduction is a threat to their livelihoods. I'd like to turn this question over to you, Becky. Can you look at this from a global perspective?
Well, I agree. People are at the center of health in our planet, and they have to be the priority. And so, as you said, smallholder farmers are the ones raising so much of the food, but also the ones who are not eating enough protein in a lot of countries. And research that we've done showed that in order to have for everyone to have a healthy baseline criteria diet, the greenhouse gases in some countries will actually have to go up. So yes, people do need to consume more proteins in these places where undernutrition is prevalent. And but at the same time, how can we help these smallholder farmers hold on to they're using practices that are that can improve their technology. We can help assist them in more sustainable practices, rather than pushing to what is we push into industrial farm production in these countries. So how can we help enable these farmers to continue to grow and produce a variety of foods, pulses, and vegetables and animal products, while not resorting to to industrial practices that are damaging for the environment, but also damaging for these smallholder farmers and their income. So we need to keep people and human capital at the core of our solutions in everything we do.
Thank you very much. And Joyca, I'm going to turn to you now. One audience member, Lillian Kwamboka, has pointed out that actually there are opportunities associated with smallholders too. And she asks, how could city consumers be engaged with traditional foods grown by smallholder farmers, which aren't in the main food value chains?
Well, I think you need some connection to establish the connection back between the food and between producers and consumers. You can do that in different ways. I think in our city we try to do that by making the producer a known person with food coming from the area and being delivered to the city. We have some projects there. That's one thing we do, so that you know where your food is coming from, who produces it, and that makes you more aware of what is needed to produce this food, and maybe learn to know some vegetables you never knew, knowing how it is produced. We do some farm classes too with children to get to know the producer. That kind of thing, I think you can do that easy on a local level. You need to get to know the area and who, because in our city there aren't a lot of food. The area surrounding it is full of them.
Thanks very much indeed, Joyca. So there does seem to be opportunity there, and certainly in middle-income countries too. I have heard of significant efforts in this regard in countries like Bolivia and Indonesia and others. And just a correction there, that question was actually asked by Johanna Hurtado. So thanks very much for that question, Johanna. Rebekah, I'm going to come back to you with another question that's more based around the way that we're using land. So we have now a question coming in from Tao Orion, who's looking at could we be changing agricultural practices instead? So what about changing the way that we manage agriculture? For example, changing tillage so that the way that we actually are reducing emissions from tillage. He questions whether grains and pulses are actually producing a great deal of emissions in that way at the moment. And similarly, are there parallel possibilities of carbon sequestration from changing grazing practices? And could these efforts actually outweigh interventions such as reducing meat consumption? Back to you, Rebekah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a lot of questions, so I'm going to try to do it justice, and it's a really good one. To address the idea of can we do better on existing landscapes? Absolutely. I think what I've seen a lot when we talk about things like alternative meat products, whether it's plant-based meat, cellular, ag, kind of the whole gamut of new innovations, is a tendency to talk about it as an either or. And instead, we really need to be talking about this as a yes and. For example, there is no reason that these sorts of things can't be included within the supply chains of plant-based food, but more importantly, outside of that context, just in general, holding agroecological principles as in land management is incredibly environmentally important, both from a conservation standpoint, where you have shared landscapes, shared habitats that can serve both wildlife and climate goals and food production for people, and also in terms of community. So I think that the answer is yes, these things are deeply important. I would like to see more of them. In the United States, we're not particularly good at funding and investing in these things. Only about 2% of the USDA's budget goes into it. Most things are oriented at industrial farming. So there is so much progress that can be made on that, but that's kind of its own thesis. Bringing it back into what are the opportunities for addressing climate through existing systems. And I'm kind of reading into this that we're talking about pasture, we're talking about grazing. And the answer to that is limited. So I came from a ranch, I came from kind of a background in which this was a big focus. How do we create the most valuable ecological reservoirs on existing production land, whether that's cropping or whether that's pasture. And purely from a mathematical standpoint, you cannot address climate to the extent that we need to. You cannot have a transformative solution without steering away net demand from especially cattle product consumption. It's really, I think, it's wonderful when you are a land manager, a land steward who is doing the best you can within an existing system. And I've seen many people do that. I am friends with those people. But the system itself, in this case livestock, just cannot scale. And if you were to scale extensive production systems like grazing systems to meet the projected demand for food in the future, or if you were to say, let's transition industrial livestock production exclusively into grazing systems, number one, you would run out of land. Number two, you wouldn't be able to feed as many people. In the United States, it'd be about less than 1/4 of beef demand could be met through doing that if you maxed out our agricultural system. So the problem is the extensive nature. It's really important that we have agroecological values incorporated into land management, but at the same time, we are no longer in a position where we can rely on that exclusively to solve our climate and biodiversity crises. We need alternatives that meet the 95% of consumption that comes out of industrial farming.
Thanks very much indeed, Rebekah. Turning to you now, Becky, we've had a question specifically on awareness raising, and this comes in from Heidi Spurrell. And she says, how do we raise awareness, public awareness, around the impacts of conventional livestock farming as a way to incentivize changes in diets?
Yeah, excellent question. We really need, like Rebekah was saying, we need a large shift, especially in countries like the United States and other industrialized developed countries. What we've learned is that social media, the tool of social media has been really powerful in terms of the Meatless Monday movement. It had, the hashtags and people who are, hashtagging a meal or a chef who's talking about it. So you need to work with all sectors, we find. So you need to work with, with individuals, with chefs and culinary influencers who can come up with really good meals. And then when you have that food in front, then you can bring in that conversation. We also found, like exactly what Rebekah was talking about earlier, is we need to have, you need to have the hook that's going to make someone interested. And what we're finding in almost in every survey we do, 60% or more of people are changing their meat consumption because of their health. Even when climate awareness is growing, even in the younger generations, is how I feel, how personally right now. So when you can link it to your personal health today, how I'm going to feel, then people will be more open to other reasons to reduce meat. We find that just so then that awareness helps, and then peer groups help. If families help, if someone is. If you try a food and it's really good, and or your friend likes it and you try it, then you're more likely to try another one. So really, you have to hook it on the food that tastes good. You have to hook it on the health, and then you can talk about the climate and awareness. So I think we need to continue to use all sectors: healthcare, education, businesses, culinary, in the culinary world, and then just to continue to talk that message and use influencers, use media personnel, use movie stars have been really valuable. So all these influencers are also continuing the conversation. And when there's someone who looks like me or looks like you who is talking about that, athletes, we have vegan athletes who really spread the message among the athletes. And so it's really fun in a way, because you can be very creative with how you get this message out and use your influence in your world to make a difference. So we all need to be in it.
Thanks so much, Becky. And indeed, also some of the Bollywood stars have been very big in promoting dietary change. Joyca, I'm going to take the next question to you. And more than one person has been asking also about the role of urban agriculture. And Ramin Ibrahiminejad and Ala Ullah Sida in particular have come in and said, given that at least half of our diets should be healthy, fresh vegetables and so on, how can we get this kind of production going in urban areas? And given your experience in Ghent, where I know that you haven't just tried to influence the diets of the most wealthy. You've also been working with the low-income populations. Can you talk about getting this fresh produce through urban agriculture and other means to all sectors of the population?
Yeah, we did some projects on that. I think growing food is a very strong motivator for all kinds of all kinds of people. We see people from different backgrounds, also people with a low income, people from very diverse backgrounds, being very interested in growing their own food. So we did some projects with gardens that are accessible even on grounds that were to be developed later into housing units. But there was in a few years a very strong local thing going on with not only growing food, but projects came out to work with the vegetables, to make some spreads and other produce, and then spread it through the people taking part in the project or living around the site. So we try on a small scale to connect these things. As what Becky said, you have a connection between people growing food, children learn to know how their food looks like, is grown, people trying to make produce with it, employment, health issues, and neighborhood thing going on. So I think you can use food as a very, very strong motivator for all kinds of these things you wanna get done in your neighborhoods, where you look for these hooks to do something.
Thank you very much indeed, Joyca. And we're coming now to the end of the session. So just to attempt a quick summary, what we've learned from the speakers is, I think, first of all, that we can no longer argue that for climate, only one set of solutions will work. We can't say only act in agriculture. We know now that we need, for real transformation, action on consumption, on food industry behaviors, and also on how agriculture is done. It's a package. We've also learnt that livestock isn't one thing, people aren't one homogenous group, livelihoods in food systems are also incredibly diverse. So again, it's not one size fits all, the same solution for every place, for every person. And I hope what you've learned from the panelists and also from the presentations that they showed you, the incredibly exciting wealth of solutions that are emerging around the world and are increasingly successful. So first of all, please join me in thanking all of them. To those of you online and in the audience, my apologies if your question didn't make the final cut. I hope that you heard a lot of interesting discussion that will increase the relevance of your own work going forward. So we'll draw the session to a close here. So goodbye from us and goodbye from the session on shifting to healthy and sustainable climate-friendly diets. I'd like to draw all of your attention, first of all, to downloading the report. Please go ahead. That'll be a good source of information and a summary of the full day. And also to steer you towards the next session that will be starting in 15 minutes in New York City, USA, which is on Help Farmers Make Better Choices. So from all of us here, all of the team behind me, thank you very much. And thanks for joining us today. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.